As I mentioned many times in videos like these and posts on BGG News, I'm a huge fan of card games, specifically because I enjoy the mystery of not knowing what I'll have to work with in any particular hand or playing of a game. You have the rules framework, everyone knows that, but then you get these mystery components, these resources available to you, and you have to figure out what's the best way to use them. Whether you're trying to take tricks or make a bid and then match that bid on how many tricks you're going to take, or earn points, or collect sets, or gain territory, or whatever it is. You have to use these cards, these random elements given to you, in the best way possible. And I enjoy that challenge of being confronted with something mysterious and unknown, sometimes adapting, of course, as you start with some cards and you get more cards over the course of the game, and you have to adapt to that. You have to adapt to what the opponents are doing, and then adjust your plans, play the odds on what's still available in the deck or other resources available to you, and then try to find the path forward that's going to work for you. So when I got an overview of Mandala, a two-player card game by Trevor Benjamin and Brett J. Gilbert, published by Lookout Games, when I got that overview of Mandala at the Spielwarenmesse trade fair, I was already primed to enjoy the game, and the game has turned out to be a brilliant example of what you can do with cards, where the value of the cards comes not from the game themselves, but what the players do with those cards as the game proceeds. Mandala's components are simple, with a cloth board that you lay out between the two players and a deck of 108 cards that you shuffle. Cards come in 6 colors with 18 copies of each color in the deck. You deal a hand of 6 cards to each player. You place 2 cards into each player's cup, which is where you will collect cards that you score at the end of the game. And then you turn 2 cards over in the mountain of each mandala. There are 2 mandalas in which you will play. The mountain is the central area that has the cards that players can collect once a mandala scores, and each player has a field in which they will play cards during the course of the game. You're going to look at your hand of cards, and on a turn you are going to take one of 3 options. You can play a card into a mountain, and it can be a color that already exists or a color that does not appear elsewhere in the mandala. And when you play a card into the mountain, you draw cards from the deck, at most 3 cards, but you have a maximum hand size of 8, so you cannot draw over that maximum hand size. You can play 1 or more cards of a color into your field on a mandala, and you draw no cards. That just shrinks your hand size. You can discard cards, 1 or more of the same color, into a discard pile, and then you draw that many cards. So those are the options available to you once all 6 colors have been played into a mandala. And a color is locked once it's played into a particular area. So once I played green in my field, green cannot go in the mountain or in my opponent's field. If my opponent plays orange, orange is now locked. We have red. Once all 6 colors have been played, then the mandala scores. Whoever has more cards in their field will score first by choosing all the cards of one color in the central mountain area and scoring them. If you have not collected this color previously, you place one of those cards in the lowest empty spot on your river. Each player has a river for the 6 colors face down in front of them, and the other card goes into your cup. So you can look at that cup at any time. You see what cards you've collected there. The opponent now collects one of these colors, and then I get the rest. Now, I have locked in scores here where purple is going to be worth 2 points for me, yellow is worth 1, and the other colors have yet to be determined. Red is now worth 1 point for my opponent. These cards are cleared out. We flip over 2 more cards in the mountain, and we continue play. And you continue playing until either one player has collected cards of all 6 colors, and again, as you collect colors, you're going to be locking in point values for those particular cards. So if I end up getting all 6, we finish that scoring for the mandala, and then the game ends and we score points. Alternatively, if we empty all the cards in the deck, we shuffle all the discards on the side, continue playing until another mandala is scored, and then again the game ends and we tally our points by taking all the cards in our cup, turning them over, and seeing how many points we score based on the values for the colors we've set in this particular hand. So orange is worth 4, black is worth 5, yellow is worth 1. I have 10 points here. If instead I had a red card in my cup and I had set no value for red, then red would be worthless and I would throw it away. Whoever has more points wins. The beauty of Mandala is that the colors are initially all worth 0 points. Both players start with potential, with the possibility for scoring things, but initially the colors are worth nothing, and you assign value to those colors as the game progresses. So in my example, red is worth 1 point for my opponent, but red will be worth at least 3 for me, assuming that I get it in my river at some point, which may or may not happen. So colors start to differentiate themselves as the game progresses, with you valuing those colors differently based on their potential for you. Initially, everything is all the same, and then things start to splinter out and become different as the game progresses. You add the complexity to the game from what initially seemed very simple. It sort of mirrors the Mandala effect here, where things are very simple from a distance. Everything is just, it's circles, it's color, it's pattern. And then as you get closer, things get more diffracted, diffuse, hard to interpret for what's the best thing to do, because even with only 3 actions available to you, you often have lots of possibilities for what you want to do with a particular card or cards in your hand, and you don't know what's best, because each mandala scores as soon as all 6 colors are in there. You seed each mandala with 2 cards once it scores, so typically it will already have 2 colors locked in for scoring. And of course, if a color is valuable for your opponent and not for you, you have to respond to that in some manner. I have to add another color that's going to be valuable for me, or I want to score the mandala quickly so we just get done with it and my opponent can't add more color to that to juice it up. You're of course competing in the fields themselves, because whoever has more cards in the field gets to choose first. But putting cards in the field does not add any value to what you're getting from the mountain. So you have this push-pull in many directions for what you're fighting over with 2 mandalas available to you. And you're often on the precipice of a mandala having 5 colors. You're not sure whether the opponent can score it, or maybe you can score it and you're not sure you want to pull the trigger just yet. Maybe I'm going to play it into a field, but I'm only going to tie in the field. And if I'm the one who triggers the scoring and I tie, my opponent chooses first, because I pushed us into scoring, but I didn't best that opponent. I didn't top them. So they get first choice on what's available in the mountain. So I might hold off. Maybe they're holding off as well, trying to add more to the mountain to make it better, and I should just close it down. But you don't know, because you don't know what the other player has available to them. You have to react to those odds, react to what you think they can do, and of course respond to what you can do as well. That's really just the magic of the game, in that you have such simple components. This is it, just a hand of colored cards, but you're looking at it and then valuing things differently as the game progresses. The game is only 20 minutes. It is not long at all. So you have these intense highs and challenges put into this simple playing time, where you're looking at something and saying, okay, this color, I just want to use this color in my fields. This color is only worth 1 for me. I want to play it into a mandala as soon as possible in a field, because it's worth 4 for my opponent and I don't want them adding it to a mountain. But of course, if I'm locking into a field, I get no cards from that. So how valuable is that to me? The value of things gets set in a concrete way in terms of the actual points for the colors, but the resources available to you also have this diffuse value, where it's hard to put a specific number on what's valued in being played into a field, because again, that's not getting you points, but that's only letting you do other things. So the cards are tools in different ways, where you want to put them in a mountain and boost the value, and a field to take something or discard. Although I've played 11 times and I think we've discarded 6 times total in those 11 games. I don't know whether I'm not using the action well, whether I don't understand the value of it. I'm not sure. We just have not used it much, but the option is there if you need it. One time I did definitely use it in a good way, where my opponent had some high value color and then I discarded 4 of those just to put them out of the game, where I didn't have to risk doing anything with them, because they kept wanting to add them to mountains or do whatever, and I just wanted them to not resolve at all and give myself new options. So it's interesting to see that difference in the simple actions available to you. Play in the mountain, play in the field, maybe discard. I've seen suggestion from one player that they do not like the randomness of what's being added to the mandala. They don't like the 2 cards being added to the mountain and would prefer to have a clean mountain where you have control, you and your fellow player have control over which colors go where, and you don't have to risk 2 orange cards coming up where orange is worth 5 points to the opponent. I enjoy those types of situations where I have to adapt and try to respond to that randomness, that variety, that risk. So I read that suggestion. I was like, no. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to play with a variant. Although it turns out that in my first 9 of those 11 games, I indeed played with a variant without even knowing it. Mainly because, as I described the rules, you can discard 1 or more cards of the same color and then draw that many cards. You can play 1 or more cards of the same color into a field, and that's it. You draw no cards. I was also playing that you could play 1 or more cards of a color into a mountain, and then you would draw at most 3 cards and add them to your hand. But you can't. You can only play 1 card into a mountain. I had simplified the rules in my mind so that all actions were treated the same way. 1 or more cards of a color into the mountain, into the field, into a discard pile. I had streamlined that rule, just, I don't know, this is the editor in me or something, or I wanted everything to be the same. But in fact, the rule is only 1 card into a mountain. So I discovered that I had been playing with a variant only when I started to do this video and refreshed myself on the rules yet again, and only now discovered my error. So now I played twice with the actual rules, and they're mostly the same. It mostly plays out the same. The only difference is with the rules, I'm not going to say actual rules, because with the rules as published, you don't get bombs added to the mountain. Where I played a couple of games and someone would have 4 cards they would collect and then add that to the mountain at once, and it would give them this huge haul because that color was worth 4 or 5 points to them. And they had suddenly juiced this pot and they would be scoring 20 points off of this one particular mandala. So in the games I initially played, points were 50 to 80, and now with 2 games under the rules, the winning score is around 50 to 60. So it's a little pullback in terms of the variability possible in terms of adding huge bonanzas. It was really interesting to play that way, though. I mean, I normally don't suggest variants, and yet here I was playing with a variant that was an interesting twist because it added even more risk to the game, where the opponent would try to, and this particular opponent was trying to build up things to add to a pot, and at one point the game just bogged down because they had 7 cards in hand of the same color, and they were waiting to drop this in just the perfect pot for them. I don't know how they were expecting to do that, because of course if they did 7 in one, and then they were just drawing 3 cards as a replacement, they're not really going to add much to their field, and I might end up scoring that instead of them. But this was the risk that we wanted to play, that person wanted to play. And it was interesting to see that, to respond to that, not knowing initially what they had, but it's sort of grasping over time that this is what they were trying to do, and then playing off that with my own plays to try to make that not happen. And how could I play around that? So that still exists with the rules as published, where you're only playing 1 card at a time, but you're adding things to the mountain much slower and sort of responding tit for tat on the pot, where you're adding things up or overtaking the field, and now they regret adding something to that and they have to respond to that. You have more back and forth just because things resolve a little more slowly. Games have ended about half and half, with the deck running out or with someone getting 6 colors. Sometimes you want to race to get those 6 colors, because if I've scored a bit more than you in the 4 region, 5 region, and maybe you've collected only 1 card of a color without getting any points, well, I just want to end the game as soon as possible because I will have more points already in my cup, and I just want it over. So I'm trying to push to score those colors, and the other player is trying to hold off from that. And other times you want to go a little bit slower and you're trying to just grab lots of things all at once. And it's that variability within this simple structure that just really drives me, and it drives my interest in Mandala. The potential that I initially saw nearly a year ago at this trade fair paid off actually playing this copy of the game, which, by the way, I borrowed from the BGG library, and that copy was donated by Lookout Games, so I just want to let you know how I got this copy of the game. So there you go. The potential is available for you as well to make the colors what you will.